here from Backroad Buddies, and the video we want to share with you today is about tips and tricks from Season 6, 2024. So it's that time of year when we look back on the previous travel season and kind of list the lessons we learned during the season. So we share those in hopes that at least one of them will be helpful and useful to you. And if you're interested in only like one or two of the tips, you can look in the description below for a timeline where you can click and go right to a particular tip that you want to get more information about. Tip 1 is use fans to clear condensation. So overnight, condensation likes to build up on the windows, especially the windshield, which can kind of slow you down in the morning if it's a travel day and you want to get going and you need to get that windshield clear. So we have two little DC fans. Well, I think we actually have 3 or 4, but anyway, we'll take a couple of those and bring them over by the windshield and have them blowing on the windshield while we're packing up in the morning. So that'll help. If it doesn't clear it completely, it'll at least give us a good start. And so then when we're ready to go, we may still need to turn on the defroster, or we keep microfiber towels in the driver and passenger doors so we can wipe the windshield down fairly quickly. So, but the fans definitely do help. Tip 2 is dance inside the rig for exercise. Now lately I've been trying to close my exercise ring on my Apple Watch. So basically the cardio, I like to get in an hour every day. Now that can be challenging on travel days or when it's bad weather, it's pouring down rain outside. So now you're in this little RV, what do you do then? So I found, at least in our Winnebago Echo, if we fold down the dinette table and we have the lagoon table put away, there's enough space there in the dinette area to dance. So I'll put some music on and dance around, and Keith will go in the back and sit on his bed and hang out there. So that really works out pretty well. And then I've also found that when we're driving down the road, if I'm in the passenger seat, I can actually dance and get my exercise in that way as well. However, it really takes a lot of energy and movement to get the Apple Watch to count that as exercise. So it may not be for everyone. And then I also kind of keep an eye on cars passing us because I don't want them to, misinterpret my movements as a cry for help or an insult or something like that. But there are creative ways to get that exercise in. If there's a will, there's a way. Tip 3 is use the booster seat as a backrest when sitting in the dinette. I noticed in our Winnebago Echo, we have the dinette area and the table that folds up and down. And because it folds up, it actually sits a little bit away from the bench. So ergonomically, it's not the best, because if I'm sitting there in the dinette on that bench seat and working on my laptop for an hour or two, it kind of bothers my back because I'm kind of leaning forward a little bit because the ergonomics isn't right. So I found that the booster seat, because the Winnebago comes with a couple booster seats that are intended to go in the driver and passenger seats to raise you up a little bit, because the floor of the dinette area is a little higher than in the cab. So that booster seat is helpful for those. But I found if I take that booster seat and put it behind my back, then that scooches me forward enough that I still have some back support, but now I'm a little more ergonomic of sitting and working at the dinette table there. Tip 4 is to keep the griddle away from the side of the RV. So we travel with a Blackstone griddle, which is great. There's a quick connect on the Winnebago Echo that we can connect into. And so we generally set it up on this folding table we have. Well, it just seemed like, I don't know, the most natural place to put it is right up against the side of the RV, because that's where the quick connect is, and to use it there. But what we found is that the grease splatters on the side of the RV, which isn't a very good look. Plus, it's probably a little bit of a fire hazard to have that griddle so close to the RV. So just moving that table out a few feet kind of eliminates all those problems. Tip 5 is mark the positions of the wheels. So many times when we go to a campsite, they are not level. And so when we first get to one, we'll actually spend some time kind of moving the rig around inside the site to try to find the most level spot before we put the levelers, so we have, block it up or whatever to get it closer to level. But because we're in a Class C, if we want to go somewhere during the day, we need to pack up and leave and come back. So we don't want to go through that process of finding that perfect spot in the site again every time we leave. So we actually mark where the wheels are in the site so we can pull right back into that perfect spot. Now you can mark it with rocks or sticks or even your leveling blocks, or what also helps is if you have a doormat. So we have like a little doormat that we put at the bottom of the steps when we come out, and that kind of helps line us up as well. So we'll leave that there. So just some indications of when you come back, you can go right to that nice spot again. Tip 6 is put a rug between the GoTreads and 2x6s. Now this is another tip related to leveling. So we carry with us GoTreads, which are, they're basically traction boards, but they can also be used to level because they kind of fold so you can get, from 1 to 4 inches of lift with using those. But if we have to level and it's more than 4 inches, we have 2x6s we carry with us as well. So we'll put a 2x6 underneath the GoTreads. Not the most stable thing, but we can get close to 6 inches that way of lift. Now the problem when we first started doing that is the GoTreads and the 2x6s, they slide on each other. So we happened to have an entry rug that we had stopped using because we didn't like it, so we got another one. So we actually cut that in half and we put that rug in between the GoTreads and the 2x6s, and that seemed to give it enough friction that we weren't sliding off those 2x6s. Tip 7 is to have a funnel to be able to put hand-carried water into your freshwater tank. Now, some campgrounds that we go to don't have a freshwater fill, which is normally how we fill our freshwater tank. We just run a hose from the freshwater fill with a, it's a filler tube that kind of goes into the gravity fill and we fill that way. However, there are times where they don't have that, and so they only have a place where you can fill up jugs of water. So then you have to hand carry your water over to your rig and then pour it in. And in order to pour that in, for one, on the Winnebago, the gravity fills up kind of high, so it's not the most convenient or easy way to pour it in. But having a funnel helps you get that in there, and then we actually connected the funnel kind of up to a little connector hose, and yeah, it's kind of MacGyvered together. So we did try that out once, but we generally don't need to do that. But having that funnel, a clean funnel, lets us know that if we're in a situation like that, we can do that. We normally try to plan ahead, and we don't stay at campgrounds very long. So we'll look ahead, and if someplace doesn't look like they're going to have a fill, we'll fill before we leave the previous. And usually we can have enough water to get us through to the campground after that. So planning usually avoids situations like that, but it's nice to have something just in case. Now, there is another way of doing that that is easier, but it means that you'll need to have your siphoning hose with you, because the Winnebago Echo, the water system, there is a city fill, which you would normally connect up to city pressurized water to have it go there instead of going through your fresh tank. But that's also how you sanitize your freshwater tank, or at least you can sanitize it that way. You would change the configuration on the panel to sanitization and then hook up your siphoning hose to that city water fill and put the other end in your jug, and then you can turn the water pump on, and that'll pump the water from the jug into your freshwater tank. So there's no lifting and going all through that. Now, that being said, you have to have, for one, you have to have your siphoning hose with you, which we don't normally carry with us when we travel. And two, that does put wear and tear on your water pump. We don't do that, but that is another option. And if you're only doing that every once in a while, then the wear and tear on your water pump is probably going to be really insignificant anyway. But just thought I'd throw that out there. Tip 8 is clean up RV antifreeze spills right away. Yeah, this was something we kind of learned the hard way. We didn't notice that there had been some spillage on the bathroom floor. It has like a wooden floor there for the shower, and some RV antifreeze had gotten on there, and we didn't notice it right away. Well, that pink stuff stains, and so now we have this permanent stain on that wooden floor. Not a big deal, but just to be aware of that antifreeze will stain things. Tip 9 is mark the filler tube with the amount of bleach for sanitization. So we generally try to add a little bit of chlorine to our tank, our freshwater tank, I know every week or two, or just periodically throughout the travel season. And so at first we were, getting out the measuring spoon, measuring the right amount of bleach. And we decided there was an easier way because, as I was saying before, we normally have this filler tube that has an on-off, it has a close valve on it. So that's what we usually hook up to the hose when we're filling our freshwater tank. We would mark 4 teaspoons, which was about the amount of bleach we needed for 40 gallons because we don't normally fill our 50-gallon tank up all the way. So we just put the bleach in up to the point with the valve closed, and then we tip it into the gravity fill, open the valve, and let the fresh water flow in, and that kind of washes everything through and gets it all in there. So we don't have to worry about measuring things out or getting out measuring spoons, and so it's just nice, quick, and easy for us. Oh, and I probably should mention also that in the water compartment we actually note we kind of put some tape on there and wrote in how much bleach we need per gallon for that periodic sanitization, and then at the end of the season, once a year, how much, because then you kind of want to do a super sanitization, and how much bleach you need there. So all those numbers are right there and easy to reference instead of having to look it up somewhere. Tip 10 is to use pot holders to level the induction cooktop. So there's a lot of times where we don't get the RV perfectly level. And for a lot of things it doesn't really matter that much, but on the induction cooktop we found, yes, it does pretty much matter, because the induction cooktop is a nice smooth surface. You put a nice smooth pan on there and it's not level. That, pot of pasta water just starts sliding off the induction cooktop. Not a good thing. So we found that we just take our pot holders and we stick it underneath the induction cooktop and use a little bubble level and get that level. Now it's a little tricky when you actually need to use those pot holders to take the pot off the induction cooktop, but you just kind of hold the cooktop with one hand, pull the pot holders out, and then grab the pan with the pot holders, and then you can let go of the induction cooktop. So it's doable, but it just was something, pot holders you got them around anyway when you're cooking, hopefully. So it was just something nice and easy and handy to level that cooktop with. Now, of course, the other option is to take the induction cooktop outside, but that's assuming it's nice weather to cook outside. Tip 11 is to wear gloves when hiking. Now, we travel a lot. We're about 6 months out of the year, and we're outside a lot. So skin cancer is a concern of ours. So we want to make sure that we're trying to cover up as much as our skin as possible, kind of reduce the use of how much sunblock we use. So we actually bought sun gloves this year for hiking with. So it covers up the backs of your hand, because we normally hike with trekking poles, so your hands are up. And so the backs of the hands can get quite a bit of sun. But just putting on those sun gloves really helps keep that sun off the back of the hands. Plus it helps with the trekking poles because, you know, as your hands get sweaty, it gives you a little more grip on your trekking poles as well. So a bonus. Tip 12 is to use a step stool when the steps stop working. So near the end of the season, our retractable steps at our entry door in the Winnebago Echo stopped working. So they wouldn't retract anymore, or extend, I should say. And so we pulled out our step stool. We had a little step stool with us, but it was a little low. We actually stopped at a hardware store and bought a little higher of a step stool. We couldn't really find a good height because a lot of times, especially if you level, you're raising up the RV even higher. So it was a little bit of a pain to go in and out with a step stool, but it was better than that big drop off without the step stool. So it's nice to have one of those along with you just in case. Tip 13 is to use ratchet straps to retract, to hold the steps retracted when the motor breaks. So this kind of goes along with our broken steps. So when it first broke, the steps would not extend. And we figured out that yes, it was the motor was the issue. So we removed the motor so that when we were set up at camp, we could have the steps extended. So that was a lot nicer than using the steps tool. But when we're traveling down the road, we can't have those steps sticking out there. And without the motor there, the steps don't stay retracted. So we just took some ratchet straps, strapped it up so when we're traveling down the road, those steps aren't sticking out. Now, that meant that we still use the step stool when we made a quick stop, like at a grocery store or a quick picnic lunch or something, because it was a lot more effort to take those ratchet straps off and put them back on. So we only did that when we set up at camp. Luckily, this was near the end of the season, so we didn't have to do that for too long. And we're just trying to get through to the end of the season when we can get home and get a more permanent solution. Tip 14 is to attach the phone to the life jacket when paddling. Now we travel with a stand-up paddleboard that I like to use. Keith doesn't use it, but I like to use it. And I like to take my phone out on the paddleboard with me so I can use it for one kind of security if I need to text Keith for some reason, like I'm downstream and I can't get back upstream, or something along those lines. And I also like to take pictures and video with it. But I don't want to be dropping my phone in the water and having it sink to the bottom. So the first season I actually had this waterproof floatable pouch that the phone sat in, and I attached that to my life jacket. But that case caused some glare, both when I was trying to use the screen through the case. I had a hard time reading the screen because of the glare, and also when I was taking pictures, I'd sometimes get glare from the case that way as well. So I didn't like that. The beginning of season 6, I had bought a Peak Design handlebar bike mount for my phone. And to use that, I had to get this Peak Design case. Now what this allowed was, there's actually a way of attaching things now to it where I didn't before with the other phone cases I had. So this is a little Peak Design attachment, and there was a wrist strap that I could attach it to the wrist strap. And I tried that, but it was dangling from my wrist when I was paddling, and the phone would bang into the paddle, and that was kind of annoying. So I decided that really wasn't going to work. So then I used that to attach it to my life jacket. Now, just in case that didn't hold, I still didn't want my phone sinking to the bottom of the water, so I actually attached 2 camera floats to the phone as well. So it was kind of a dual kind of safety there. So the strapping to the jacket was to prevent it from dropping it to begin with, and the camera floats were just in case that system failed, it wouldn't sink to the bottom. So maybe I'm a little overly cautious, but that made me feel a lot better. And it's just nice and convenient having it right there in the life jacket. It was nice, I could reach it, I could get to it, and then when I wasn't using it, it just kind of dangled there and it wasn't really in the way. So that worked out pretty well. Tip 15 is to put the 10 essentials in a packing cube. Now this is referring to the 10 essentials of hiking. I did another video on those 10 essentials, so if you want to go see that and see what that is. But it's basically what you need to take with you on a day hike, mainly for safety reasons in a sense. So if you get stuck out on trail or get lost, that you have what you need to survive, basically. Now, we go hiking a lot, and sometimes we go backpacking as well, but we have two different backpacks each. One is a lighter backpack, so if it's a short day hike or we're walking around town, it's usually, if we're not carrying a lot of weight, usually like only one water bottle. So there's not a lot of support with that, but it's a little smaller backpack. And then we also have a little larger backpack that we do for longer day hikes where we need more weight. We need to carry 2 or more water bottles. So it has a little more support and gives us a little more comfort to handle that weight. Now, I don't want to duplicate all my 10 essentials between those two backpacks, so I'm constantly switching gear back and forth because depending on what we're going on. So I ended up putting those 10 essentials in a packing cube, which means I can just grab that packing cube, take it out of one backpack and put it in another and switch it back and forth. And it just makes it so much easier, and it knows I didn't forget anything. And it's like, oops, I forgot to bring that over. So it just kind of helps organize and make it a little more convenient to move stuff around. Tip 16 is to turn on the AC before you reach the campground. Now generally we don't use the air conditioner, and I'm talking about the RV air conditioner, not the air conditioner of the Ford Transit. We normally don't run that unless we're in a campground with shore power and we're hooked up. But there are times where it's really hot out and where it's a travel day, you're trying to get to your next campground, and that Ford Transit air conditioner really only affects the cab. It really doesn't get the rest of the RV cool. So the rest of the RV can be pretty hot. And a lot of times if you wait until you get to the campground, you plug in, and now you kind of have to wait for that air conditioner to take effect to cool down that really hot RV before it's comfortable inside. So we have found in the past that we can run that air conditioner off our batteries, actually for quite a few hours even. I wouldn't do it long term, and especially if I don't have a way of recharging the batteries. But if we're on our way to a campground that has short hookups, then we know we're going to be able to recharge. So we'll turn on that air conditioner maybe an hour or two before we reach the campground. Now the rest of the RV is at a comfortable temperature when we get there, so we aren't sweating it out waiting for that RV to cool down. Tip 17 is to use silicone to reattach loose trim inside the rig. Now during the season we had a trim piece come loose. I think it was like on the bench seat, kind of in the back corner. And so we at first used super glue to reattach it, but we found that didn't hold because super glue is a little brittle and you're driving down the road and those things like kind of flex as the RV flexes when you're driving along. And so we fixed it again, and this time we used silicone, and silicone has a lot more flex to it, and that seemed to really work. That trim piece, we went for several months after that, and that trim piece is still holding. So keep that in mind when you're trying to fix little loose things inside the RV. Tip 18 is use super glue to fix broken bathroom handle. Now this seems opposite advice of what I just gave in the previous tip, but the bathroom handle, it's a little plastic handle on the Winnebago on the door, and you're constantly pulling on that, and it had kind of split. So if we use silicone, because of all that force on it all the time, we don't think silicone would have held. So we use super glue in this case, and we put it along the crack, and then you add a little amount of baking soda on there, and that'll help that super glue cure faster, but it also allowed Keith to kind of run his finger along that crack and get that super glue down in that crack without getting the super glue on his finger. So that seemed to really work out well, and that's held ever since as well. Tip 19 is to use a 50 amp to 30 amp dog bone when the 30 amp outlet doesn't work. Now actually in our case, the 30 amp outlet worked, but they had actually installed it upside down on the campsite pedestal. And what was weird is, so when we normally hook in our Hughes surge protector, and because the outlet was upside down, the cable kind of ran out, and then the surge protector, which is sizable box, kind of hang there, and so you got all this tension on this cable, and that just didn't sit with us very well. So we're like, well, we've got this dog bone, we'll just use the dog bone, plug that into the 50 amp, and then we can plug the Hughes transformer in that, and then it kind of rests more on the ground, and it just seemed like a better setup for us. But yeah, always keep that in mind. Take dog bones with you. So if what your rig uses isn't available, you can adjust and use something different. Tip 20 is to remove the vent cover so you can see the fresh water tank. So near the end of the season, our fresh water tank sensor stopped working, so we couldn't really tell how much water was in a freshwater tank anymore. So as a temporary solution, we knew the water tank actually sits below the beds. It's kind of in a U shape below both of the beds in the back. And there's 2 vents, one on each side. And if you remove that vent, you can actually see the fresh water tank. So you can actually see where the water level is in there. Now, to make that a little easier, there's a little light in the step right there. So we actually moved that light over to the fresh water tank so it kind of shined through the tank, so that it made it easier to see where that water level was. So we used that solution the rest of the season, and then when we got home, we actually did a more permanent solution. Tip 21 is to remove the cold water filter before winterization. Now, the Winnebago Echo comes with a water filter underneath the kitchen sink that filters the cold water line coming up to that kitchen sink. Now, the one filter that comes with the Echo is a 5 micron filter. Well, we had replaced that with a little stronger filter, a 0.5 micron filter. And then when we got home and we started winterizing, we were trying to pump that pink RV antifreeze solution in, and we were waiting for that pink to come out the cold water kitchen sink to know that we had gotten it through all the lines. And it wasn't turning pink, and it wasn't turning pink, and it wasn't turning pink. And then it finally dawned on us that, hey, that water filter is filtering out the antifreeze. So once we removed the filter, the pink came right out, and we're like, oh, okay. So hopefully we'll remember that the next time we winterize, then we aren't wasting so much RV fluid or antifreeze. Tip 22 is use thread to attach the dead cat to the mic mount. Now, this is kind of specific to my camera setup. I use a Canon PowerShot, and the built-in microphone isn't very good, so I actually attach an external microphone, and then there's a dead cat that sits on top of it that reduces wind noise, and it's just this kind of fuzzy thing. And because I carry my camera usually on a Peak Design clip on my packs, it's hanging down. And so that dead cat is only really on there by a friction fit on that microphone. So I kept losing the dead cats because they would fall off as you're hiking down the trail or riding a bike or whatever, and I wouldn't notice it. And so I decided to come up with a different solution. So actually I just took a needle and thread, and I kind of sewed it a little bit through the fabric of that dead cat, and then wrapped it around the microphone mount to hold it in place. And just real simple solution. Tip 23 is to preview the Google Maps routes. Now we use Google Maps as our main navigation when we're traveling, but we're the back road buddies, not the interstate buddies. So we like to go on the scenic route. Well, Google Maps likes to take you on the fastest route, of course. And there's some filters, but they aren't all that useful. You know, avoid tolls or avoid highways. Well, we don't want to avoid all highways. We want to mainly avoid interstates if we can. But we also want to, you know, if there is a scenic route, let's take that way, even if it's longer. So we try to get in the habit of looking at the route ahead of time. Now, there's also other reasons to want to look at the route. It could be that it's trying to take us down dirt roads, which we usually try to avoid because that really puts a lot of wear and tear on the RV. The other is clearances. Google Maps doesn't normally tell you what the size restrictions are on different roads or underpasses. That's more of an issue out on the East Coast than it is the rest of the US, but it still can be an issue. And there are other GPS apps that will warn you about those things, but we don't do that. We're not that big, so we usually just try to pay attention to, you know, the posted restrictions but yeah, kind of review it as well and kind of think what might be an issue there. But if we want to do a scenic route, how, for one, do we even know it's a scenic route? Well, we carry a paper atlas with us. So and usually those are marked really well. You know, they have the little route and the little dotted lines go, oh, this is a scenic route. So, hey, I want to take this and not this road over here. Well, to get Google Maps to route you that way, you can set intermediate destinations along that scenic route to force Google Maps to take you there. And then even sometimes it'll try to veer you off onto something faster, like, oh, you know, we found a faster route. Do you want to take this? No, no, no. So that can be a little annoying, but you know, so it takes a little bit more work to get onto the scenic routes, but we think it's worth it because even this past season, though, we were going from Kings Canyon National Park over to Lake Tahoe, and there was some scenic routes we wanted to take, and we kind of and it was a lot of work to try to force Google Maps to get us to go there, but we ended up going through, I think the town was called Sonora, just a cute little town, drove right through the town, and that was worth the effort of forcing Google Maps to go the way we wanted to. Because we would miss those types of things if we just let Google take us the fastest way to our destination, because we're not interested in just getting to the destination, we're interested in seeing what's along the way. Tip 24 is use Gaffer's tape to repair trail runners. Yeah, I think I mentioned this before in our new gear video for the season, because we just haven't been happy with the trail runners and how they're not holding up like they used to, or we expect them to. So in the fall before the season, we had both bought Ultras trail runners, and by the spring when we were getting ready for the season, they were already worn out. So I actually went with Topos that time, and then partway through the season, those wore out as well. So that just seems too soon, and I didn't really want to go out and buy yet another pair of trail runners before the season was over, so I pulled out the Gaffer's tape, and the one pair of shoes, the heel had really worn down, so I was concerned I was going to get blisters on my heel, so I just put tape over it and got those trail runners to last me the rest of the season. But hopefully they've improved the quality since then, because there's been quite a few people complaining about it, but we'll see. Tip 25 is to use rubbing alcohol to remove pine sap. Now this was, and actually I'm surprised it hadn't happened sooner, but we went on a hike and we got back and we sat down in the camp chairs and kind of relaxed, had a little snack or whatever. And I went to get up and I noticed my pants were kind of sticking to the chair. And I looked down, there's a spot on the chair, and yep, there's a spot on my pants. And we believe it was pine sap. And the only thing we could think of is during the hike, there was a couple trees we kind of had to, that were downed over the trail, and we had to kind of climb over, and I'm assuming that's where I picked it up. But we're like, oh great, now how do I get this off? So we kind of Googled real quick, and rubbing alcohol was one of the solutions, or it's also known as 70% isopropyl alcohol. And that's something we actually carry with us. So I pulled that out, I spread it on the spot of my pants, and that worked immediately. That came right out. Now I also used it on the camp chair, and I don't know what the difference is with that fabric there. I was able to get most of it out, so it wasn't sticky anymore, but there's still a stain there. So it wasn't perfect, but just something to keep in mind if you ever run into that issue yourself. So that's all we have for you this time. I'm sure at the end of the next season, we'll come up with a whole other list of tips and tricks. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. If you want more details, like links to some of the items that we talked about, you can look in the description below for a link to our related blog post. So check that out. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Ta-ta for now.